excited to present our next person who's going to address you. Several months back, we had a luncheon for just to kind of toss out the idea of student engagement and to see if people would share with us their concepts. And gosh, there was a gentleman at that luncheon who just had us all enthralled. So, and here he is. I'm pleased to present to you Charlie Daniels from the Department of Engineering and Technology.
Hope I can live up to that setup. Either that or meet that man. Thanks for inviting me to be here about something that I take very seriously, as all of you do, and something that matters a lot to me, which is not only teaching, but learning. I have tried in my many years of both corporate life and in the academic life to really try to understand what it is that causes people to learn. I know I learn differently than my wife and my friends. The best learner I know is my Labrador Retriever. And I've actually done some research on him and some scientific experiments, and I have come to the conclusion that this Labrador Retriever has auditory increases based on the visual appearance of food. In other words, he hears better when you have a treat. So, I mean, he'll sit and he'll stay and he'll do all those things. But he has learned that if I have food in my hand, he will snap to. I mean, he looks like a Marine in his attempts to please me. And the idea is we've trained him that way. But I've been working in both as an executive in the corporate world and in the academic world for some time. And what I've tried to do through that time is to find ways that I can improve retention and learning. Now, the provost is not here, so I can say this. I wish that we could get away with not getting grades, because I think grades are one of the biggest impediments to learning that we have. One of the reasons I do a lot of teaching in the community with some of the large companies and some of the large government organizations. And I find without a grade to motivate them, you really do have to find ways to get them engaged that are outside. Now, for a student, you get them to do any assignment just about for a grade. But is that really learning? My question is, I can certainly motivate them to do things, but are they really learning, or are they just going through the motions? So the idea is to try to find ways that you can engage their minds. If you can engage their minds, you can engage their passions, you'll engage their learning. If you look at some of the literature and combine that with some of my experience, I see a couple of processes that take place here. I would say engagement for me begins when I'm assigned a course or I volunteer for a course. And I was thinking about that on the way over here today. As I said, in the bridge tunnel, I do a lot of most people think in the shower, I think in the bridge tunnel, because I got so much time to wait there. And I was thinking, how much time do I put into design? And I guess I've never really clocked it. But I think if you took the course hours, the 3 credit hour course is 42 hours, I'm guessing I easily spend 40 hours in design. If that includes the research, the watching the videos, the reading the books and all the things that go into it, maybe it's 80 hours, I don't know. But I know to design a course that's really successful, I have to put a lot of energy into designing. Then I have to develop the course. I have to find the things that really are going to work. Not every idea works. I'll often try them out in a pilot class. Some of my best ideas students have really hated. I still love them, but I don't use them. And then you got to think about delivery. We have in the engineering and technology college, we have a problem that, or an issue or a challenge, whatever you want to call it, that many of you have, in that we do a lot of distance learning. The things that I can do in a live classroom are so much different than the things that I can do distance-wise, especially if I've got video streaming students, which is it's the worst of all worlds except for no education. I mean, we are reaching those students, they are getting an education, but it's especially difficult on the instructor to try and engage them. And then if the communications aren't working, what do you do then? And then, so delivery is important. You have to think about those things. I like to really script things out so that I understand where I'm going to be, what questions we're going to be asking. I learned from the folks in civil engineering, the Exceed group, that you should script as much as you possibly can. That's not to say you shouldn't be extemporaneous, but don't have white spaces. White spaces are different than silence, and Loretta is right about that. One of my previous careers, I was trained as an interrogator by the Army, and they taught me something that's really valuable with students, great in negotiations, but it is a gem if you have teenagers, and that's the art of silence. When you're interrogating someone and you're trying to get information, you ask them a question and then you wait, and they'll give you an answer, and then you wait and you're silent, and then finally they'll confess. And the same thing's true with students if you put them in the right situation. For me, feedback is important, and I try to get that at 3 stages within any course, and I try to incorporate not only what I get from the university, but also what I can get through other means. And then refinement. I never like to teach the same class twice. A good friend of mine who recently retired from the college noted that about 10 times of teaching the same class, you're really about ready to move something on. So I try to avoid that by trying to do something radically different every 3 times and somewhat different every single time. So when I'm designing, the things I try to think about first and foremost is learning styles. If you see the learning styles up, the graphic on the right here looks similar to what a Myers-Briggs type indicator or some kind of personality research. What we have learned about learning and personality types tend to be an important topic. Some people learn radically different than others. Everybody has a learning style. For example, some people like you to talk in big cloudy pictures. 1 or 2 words, and then you extemporize about the 1 or 2 words, and then they can visually paint the picture. If you did that all the time, the students that were the censors would come to you and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. It doesn't make sense. I can't get the word. So now I've got to balance the intuitive nature of the presentation with some details that drill down. And when I drill down, the intuitives I'm going to put them to sleep because they're looking for the big, cloudy, big picture kinds of things. Same thing is true with visual and verbal. Some people like pictures, and one of the things that you'll see through my presentation today, and one of the things I do in almost every one of my classes, is I try to give a little bit of both almost in every slide. You can't do that in every slide because, frankly, I haven't found all the pictures that are appropriate. What I try to do is give some words on one part of the slide that give the visual learner something, the verbal learner something, and I want a picture that engages the visual learners. In my mind, when I teach presentation skills, and I do that out in the corporate world, I tell them that the ideal PowerPoint slide is 3 words or 1 picture. Now, the experts will tell you that probably 7 words or 7 lines are adequate, but what I find, I think Loretta or one of the other speakers mentioned it earlier, what I find is if I throw up a couple of bullets and then I talk through that idea, I can engage a lot more people than if I just put 4 paragraphs of data in a 12-pitch font or 10-pitch font that I can't even read. I do, when I teach presentation skills, one of the things that I make sure the students understand is most of your audience, if not all of them, can read. So if you're just going to and your audience is here, it's not here. So almost every class that I teach, particularly the live classes, I have the students do a presentation because as an engineer or a technologist, you want to be able to present your ideas. It's one thing to have the ideas, it's another thing to actually be able to present them. Also content. I really think a lot about content. I try as much as I can to bring in things that matter. I don't go through any course during a semester without talking about Apples and iPods and bringing them in because the kids really relate to that. Some of the more experienced graduate students don't have the same affinity for Apple and iPods, and I'm a big Apple fan. I was going to wear gloves touching this Windows machine, but Allison assures me I won't catch any viruses by just actually. I also find what I've found in particular in my live classes, and I do think live classes are a little bit easier to to stage than a distance class, because in a distance class I've got so many different, I've got the live students, I've got the people in the learning centers, I've got the people that are on video streaming, and each one of those engages a little bit different. Now, one of the things that we're doing, and I'll be piloting a course in the fall, is we're not doing video streaming. We're going to actually do Adobe Connect with one of my classes, so I can get two-way with everybody. I can actually see most of them, and I can actually talk to them, which is really good for me, because I find that if you can engage students and get them to talk, no matter what you have to do, as long as it's legal, ethical, and doesn't embarrass people, if you can get them to start talking in the first 30 seconds to 2 minutes of a class, you'll have engagement. If you lecture for 30 minutes and ask questions, you've lost them. So the idea I try to do is build in, with whatever media I have, build in some kind of an idea to get them involved. I also like to segment every session as much as I can. And here's a typical example. In a 3-hour course, typically I'll speak or lecture or show information for about an hour. We'll take a break, and it's segmented exactly like that. But about a third of it will be me talking, about a third of it will be some kind of media presentation. And there are so many good videos and so many good things that you can capture from the open video market to make a point that it's quite easy to find video. What I find compelling is if you're teaching an idea, obviously you can't do this with, well, maybe you could do it with physics, but it's a little bit easier when you're teaching the social sciences, to find a video that illustrates a point that you're trying to make. When I teach emotional intelligence, I use a variety of videos. One of my favorite videos to teach how not to be emotionally intelligent is from a movie called A League of Their Own, where Tom Hanks is the manager. He's quite emotionally upset. One of the players makes a mistake, and he berates her in public. And that's where the famous statement came from, "There's no crying in baseball. Are you crying?" And it really does bring across the point that I'm trying to make, much more so especially for the visual learners than for the verbal learners. Student demographics, I think, are a huge challenge when you're designing your course and delivering your course. The millennials in particular are really interested in, what does this mean to me? Why should I pay attention to this? Why is this important? The graduate students, the baby boomers, the people that are a little bit younger than me, almost everybody's a little bit younger than me, but most of the people that I deal with as graduate students are more interested in, what can I learn that will help my career? How can I be mentored? What ideas can I learn to get along in the office a little better? So demographics are really important, as is the technology, and they go hand in hand. The millennials are so comfortable with technology that it's frightening sometimes, and most of our students are technically literate. Finally, the delivery approach. What kind of ideas are you going to be building in? I find one of the things I learned from the Exceed group is, in every session that you can, provide a question and an answer. For example, you might open a course by saying, I'm going to answer 3 questions during this session having to do with negotiating skills and influence. One of the things that is also useful is to hand out quizzes, not graded quizzes, but opinion quizzes, and then use those quizzes and use those assessments as almost talking points to go through the session, the ideas that you're trying to put across. So those are some of the things that go into the design considerations when I put a course together. I do realize, I was just reading yesterday I was just reading my feedback from the students from the last semester, and one of the courses I teach, which is finance, many of the students really liked it, and I'll give you a good example of the feedback. This